Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for those connected today in the webinar on the occasion of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, Unveiling Gender-Based Violence in Higher Education, Initial Evidence from Cuba, Mexico, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. On behalf of the UNESCO International Institute for Higher Education in Latin America and the Caribbean, IESALC, and the UNESCO Regional Office for Southern Africa, we thank you for joining this event. Before starting today's program, we invite the panelists to keep their microphones off when not participating. We also remind you that this event is being recorded and released on the UNESCO IESALC YouTube channel. Participants are welcome to post their questions in the chat box at any time. We will take up as many questions as we can in the last part of the webinar. To begin today's program, we invite the Interim Director of UNESCO IESALC, Dr. Borjen Chakroun, to take the floor. Over to you, Mr. Chakroun.
Thank you, Sarah, and very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And let me join you, Sarah, to welcome all our participants today, joining us from various regions of the world. Let me start by thanking and acknowledging our organizing partners, researchers, country teams from Cuba, Mexico, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, and all the institutions and individuals who made this webinar possible. A special greetings to our panelists, moderator, and the global community of stakeholders committed to gender equality and safe and higher education environment. Colleagues, we are meeting today on the occasion of the International Day for Eliminating Violence Against Women, underscoring the urgency of addressing violence in all its forms, including gender-based violence, in particular within higher education institutions, and this is the topic of our discussion today. And that's the focus of a study that we are presenting on gender-based violence in and around higher education systems and institutions. The prevalence, experiences, drivers, consequences, and institutional responses that we can see that are effective, that are leading to better results and outcomes. Colleagues, despite increasing attention to the challenges we are facing in terms of gender-based violence in society, the question of how it manifests, especially within higher education, is particular dynamics, and what are the institutional challenges are frequently put on spotlight. And for the higher education sector to contribute fully to sustainable development, SDG 5, and to the realization of human rights, safe and inclusive learning environments, all these are a prerequisite. And we consider that education, in particular higher education, is an important driver for addressing those challenges. We are basing our discussion today and the work we are presenting on based on the multi-country survey that we have conducted across 4 countries that I mentioned earlier: Cuba, Mexico, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, looking at different contexts, different cultural setting, different institutional arrangement as well. And the evidence that we are providing today gives practical, policy-oriented insights, not only on what is happening, but also on the drivers and consequences of gender-based violence in higher education. By convening country-specific findings alongside global perspective that we are sharing, this event and our discussion and our report gives a comparative learning and knowledge sharing, a policy learning across countries among Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa regions, reinforcing what we think important in terms of multi-stakeholders, international cooperation, solidarity, in particular South-South cooperation, as an area where we are working very hard when it comes to IESALC. It underlines also the context difference and the many structural institutional dimensions that impact gender violence and higher education institution as a whole. So, colleagues, what are the key themes for reflection that our colleagues and the speakers will be bringing? First, as I mentioned, the prevalence and nature of gender-based violence in higher education institution: physical, verbal, sexual, psychological, socioeconomic. We are also looking at institutional drivers and enabling factors, culture, governance, policy gaps, reporting mechanisms, power hierarchies, data as well, consequences for individuals, institutions and societies, from direct harm to student and staff to reputational, educational, and societal impact. Institution-wide responses and prevention strategies, how higher education institution can build a safe, inclusive, and equitable environment from policy to practice. But also we are listening to the voice of stakeholders, in particular youth, student voices, and activism, acknowledging the leadership, courage, and experiences of students as the key actors in this case. Finally, of course, we are looking at how this can inform policymaking, research, and practices, how evidence can feed into institutional reforms, national higher education policy framework, as well as international cooperation, knowledge sharing, and policy learning. Maybe you may ask the question why higher education matters in the context of a gender-based violence agenda. For us, and you will hear from our speakers, higher education institutions are critical spaces for advancing learning, research, innovation, and also environments where young adults develop socially, professionally, and personally. So it's that combination of both the role of universities as a research, as education spaces, but also engaging with communities. And this is the third function of higher education. Safe higher education institutions are integral to achieving broader goals. And I'm sure that all of us agree that it's about SDGs as a whole. It's about SDG 4, of course, because we're speaking about higher education. It's about SDG 5 because we are speaking about gender equality. But it's also about poverty reduction. It's about health. It's about decent labor. So I believe we are speaking about all of these SDGs. And the point is that if higher education institutions fail to provide safe and respectful spaces, it undermines students' outcomes, retention, mental health, institutional reputation, and ultimately affecting societal progress, social cohesion, and economic growth as well. So our meeting today and the webinar is not only about discussion, is also a call to action, colleagues. We are not only sharing findings, we are also creating this platform for dialogue, reflection, and I hope for proposals in terms of what actions we should take as a community, what actions we would like to recommend to decision makers. And I would like to encourage all our participants today to ask questions, share their context, identify actionable insight that can help us advance this agenda. And let's commit to translate this evidence, this finding that we see our debate today into initiatives, into program, into action, into capacity building that is much required. And personally, as an interim director of IESALC, I would like to reaffirm our organization commitment to providing research support, knowledge, capacity building through our campus, and partnership to advance safe, inclusive higher education system globally. All our team is mobilized for this purpose. In closing, let me invite you to engage fully with the following presentation and discussion. And joining my colleague Sarah, on behalf of IESALC team, my colleague Danielle, I thank you again and wish you a successful webinar today. Over to you, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Chakroun, for your welcoming words and for reaffirming UNESCO's commitment to providing support to advance safe, inclusive higher education systems globally. Next on the agenda, we will have Danielle Vieira, in representation of the UNESCO research team, share relevant data related to gender-based violence in higher education as part of the global research project and initial evidence collected from Cuba, Mexico, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Over to you, Danielle. You're muted, Danielle.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you just confirm you can see the presentation put in presentation mode?
Not right now, but we were seeing it before. Let's check.
Let me just share again.
I think now we're gonna, yes, we can see it. Now, if you want, you can share it as a presentation. Now we're back to you.
Okay, can you see it now?
No, not now. Can you try again, please?
Yes, I can. Just a second. I think it doesn't work when I put in presentation mode, so I'll just keep I'll just keep it like this.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, we can see it. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Let me just remove that here. Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm here based in Latin America, so it's still morning for us. Just wanted to greet the other panelists, our interim director, for doing the welcoming remarks. I can see here in the chat that we have also the representation of some of the institutions that joined us and supported us in this research. I can see also here part of the team in South Africa who was also helping us with the analysis and the survey overall. And also some other members of the research team. So just to greet everyone and say thank you for your participation in this webinar with us. What we are going to be doing in this session specifically here is to share with you some preliminary evidence that we have, some insights that we have from this multi-country study that we are doing on gender-based violence in higher and tertiary education. The analysis is still ongoing, but we have advanced in some of the analysis that we would like to share today. And then it's important for us that even before, there will be a report that will be released early next year, but we just wanted to share before some of the results. Just to highlight here in this slide, you can see a couple of instruments that have been since 45 established to deal with the topic of gender equality. And we just wanted to highlight to you that in 79, the General Assembly of UN has adopted the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. This is one important background of this study. And the other one is inside gender equality SDG 5. We also would like to highlight the target 5.2 to you, which shows that we should end all violence against and exploitation of women and girls. So this is not only aligned with the efforts to provide quality education, also in tertiary education, but also an important project that deals with target 5.2 inside SDG 5. Based on that, what we have done is, as I said previously, a multi-country study on the prevalence of gender-based violence in higher education institutions, looking specifically into aspects of prevention, mitigation, and also some responses, strategies from the institutions. We have engaged a global research team, which was under the leadership of the University of Cape Town. I can see that Professor Lilian is also here with us today. Thank you for joining, Lilian. This has involved 3 units inside UNESCO. We are here at UNESCO IESALC, colleagues in Paris. I can see also that Matthias is here from the gender section. Thank you for joining, Matthias. And also the colleagues from UNESCO Harare will also have the presentation of one of them soon. And the countries that were covered in this study include Cuba, Mexico, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. I can also see that some of the representatives from the countries are here. Also, thank you for joining us. The objectives of the survey was first to assess the respondents' perceptions of safety, so how safe they feel within their higher education institutions' environments. Second, to describe what is the extent of the GBV experience inside the institutions, and also the nature, the types of GBV that they experience, and also that they witness by study participants. This is an important point to highlight. So we are not only talking about how you experience, but also if you have witnessed such cases of GBV inside the institutions. And also the study explored the respondents' perceptions, so how they feel that the institutions are responding to GBV. So are there any specific mechanisms, guidelines, norms to deal with GBV or not inside the institutions? So this is something that we checked as part of the survey. The research was guided by UNESCO's definition, right, of GBV, as you can see there, which is any acts or threats of sexual, physical, and psychological violence. Our interim director has highlighted that also, including also sexual harassment perpetrated because of harmful gender norms or stereotypes, and also the aspect of unequal power dynamics. So with that in mind, we have developed this survey in the 4 countries. The methodology of the study, we did an online literature review, first of all, and this has also been done together with an online survey. The literature review, we have covered some of the topics that you can see there, some thematic areas, both in the literature review and also in the online survey. The questionnaire and the data collection instrument was developed around those themes. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail because we have, of course, a limited time here to present. But just for you to have an idea, we have covered aspects such as safe or unsafe spaces inside the institutions, the types of GBV, for instance, that occur, the frequency, how often, the respondents have experienced that, where does that happen, the locations, the spaces, if there are any consequences, the impact, how the institutions are dealing with it, what are the efforts really to make the campus more safe for the students and for the staff, if there are any available mechanisms or measures, for instance, for the respondents, the students and staff to complain and report on GBV situations, if there are any measures required, for instance, at the institutions for the victims, for the survivors. So these are some of the thematic areas that we have covered. And as I said, the questionnaire and the instrument for data collection was organized and developed around those thematic areas. You can see now the sample that we covered in the 4 countries. So we have 25 higher education institutions covered, 5 from Cuba, 5 from Mexico, 6 from Zambia, and 9 from Zimbabwe. In a total, we have 13,691 respondents. So we consider that to be really an outstanding response rate. Take into account that it is a sensitive topic. We know and acknowledge the fact that often people don't want to report on those aspects of gender-based violence. We have taken a lot of precautions to make sure that we have respected the respondents' answers, confidentiality. But overall, we are very satisfied with the response rate. And we also wanted to highlight here, once again, thank you once again, the engagement of the institutions who really made that response rate possible. Of course, there are some limitations that we have faced during the whole data collection process. Of course, we were using self-selected sampling strategy. We will work with the specific institutions that were nominated before we even started with the data analysis. The response rates, they varied considerably between the countries, which makes it more difficult for us to make comparisons. So we have to be very cautious here when we do the analysis, not to compare GBV experiences in one country with another, because we know that we are dealing with significant varied response rates. There was some staff respondents which were underrepresented, for instance, in Zambia and Zimbabwe institutions, where we had more responses coming from students. And as I said, it's difficult for us to compare the results among the countries. And then the analysis will really go around a individual country analysis in that sense. So these are some of the limitations that we would like to highlight. The literature review that we did, just for us to highlight here for you today, also has showed some important aspects for the countries. For instance, Mexico, they have a lot of reliable and independent reporting procedures, but not really feeling safe to respondents do not really overall feel safe to report. In Cuba, we found that there is still some limited studies available, lack of awareness raising, and also the policy frameworks. It's still a critical gap. So what exactly can be done in order to deal with the phenomenon? This is still lacking a little bit. In Zambia, we found that there are some concerns on limited understanding of GBV. So what exactly is GBV, in the context of the Zambia higher education institutions, and also some lack of reporting. And in the case of Zimbabwe, we observed that there are some lack of understanding of what constitutes, for instance, sexual harassment, or the transaction relationships. So the conclusions that we can get here is that we are dealing with a topic that it is still new in terms of the concept, how we create the concept, how we understand the concept. And we think this highlights the importance of doing such surveys as the one we did now. Just to share with you a couple of results, as I said, this is still a work in progress, but there are some conclusions that we can share with you now. First of all, we observed that women and men, they feel safe on campus during the day, but women feel less safe at night and when alone. We saw a high prevalence of GBV, 1 in 3, for instance, in Cuba and Mexico, over half of the respondents in Zambia and Zimbabwe. So for the over 13,000 respondents that we have analyzed, we are observing a high prevalence of cases of GBV, a high prevalence also of emotional violence. So within the institutions, women have reported that they experience more sexualized forms of abuse, and men have informed that they experience more physical violence. Men most frequently identified as abusive, but there is also a high proportion of females who identified other females as responsible for their mistreatment. We think that this is also an important data to call attention here. We are working with countries in Africa and in Latin America. In Latin America, for instance, we know that we have the whole aspect of the racial hierarchy that was created here after colonial times, social and also in economic disparities. And we have identified that this has also played a role in the experience of GBV. So it's important to highlight here that not necessarily women only suffer GBV from men. We also saw that they have also identified other females as responsible for their mistreatment. It's important to highlight that. Most students are abused by fellow students, and the same pattern we can see for staff. GBV, in terms of impacts, we saw that has impacted psychological health. Nearly 2/3 do not report GBV incidents. We still have to look into more detail into that. What exactly are the reasons behind that? Maybe there is a lack of mechanisms to report, or they don't feel too safe to report. But the thing is that a significant number have mentioned that they do not report the incidents. The students, they prefer to report to their peers, so not necessarily to institutional mechanisms inside the universities, so more on a peer-to-peer basis. And often this was also perceived by the respondents that the institutions, they often do not offer support or proper support for mechanisms to control and report on GBV. There is also a lack that we have observed of enforcement of procedures. So what exactly are the procedures to deal with the problem? This is still also lacking. And in the end, we would like also to highlight that we saw that there is a lack of knowledge of procedures and mechanisms. So the respondents have mentioned that they not necessarily know what are the procedures that the institutions have, what are the mechanisms that they have for them to report on problems related to GBV. So based on that, we can get to some preliminary conclusions here. And as I said, we will look into more detail that now that we are progressing with the analysis. But first of all, we can already conclude that GBV is a structural violence. We need also to reconceptualize GBV. As I said, the concept is still a little bit, so to say, it's lacking a little bit of consensus of what exactly is GBV when we look at the phenomenon inside the higher education institutions. a need for systemic change. We saw here that there is very poor mechanisms or procedures inside the institutions to deal with the problem. The need for enforcement of policies and procedures. So what exactly is available or can be done inside the institutions? These are the aspects that we think that could be highlighted. Just to finalize here, as our interim director said, I think this informs us on some of the strategies that we can take from here on, be it capacity building, training, or awareness raising inside the institutions. And this is something that we are also planning as a follow-up to this phase of the study. Well, thank you so much for your attention. I also would like to acknowledge the other colleagues, Daphne, Elsa, and Matthias, also part of the coordination team of the research, and we remain attentive and available for any questions. Thank you, Sarah. Over to you. Let me stop sharing.
Thanks to Daniela Vieira for sharing the preliminary findings on gender-based violence in higher education institutions in Cuba, Mexico, Zambia, and Zimbabwe as part of the UNESCO's multi-country research project team from the information provided by 13,069 respondents, which shows a great amount of work needed for changing the status of gender-based violence in these countries. Next on the agenda, we have Penelope Casere, UNESCO National Program Officer in Zimbabwe, who will speak about the UNESCO Our Rights, Our Lives, Our Future, plus O3 Plus program. Over to you, Penelope.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, colleagues joining from different regions. As introduced, I'm Penelope Casere under the Education for Health and Wellbeing portfolio, and I'm joining you from UNESCO Regional Office for Southern Africa in Harare, Zimbabwe. It is a pleasure to share how O3 Plus program is strengthening prevention and response to gender-based violence within higher and tertiary education institutions. This topic deeply aligns with today's evidence-driven conversation, and my presentation complements the research insights we have just heard by highlighting how the program is helping to support institutions and translate evidence into systems and practice. Next slide. So as the research has shown, young people in higher and tertiary institutions face unique vulnerabilities that come with new freedoms, which negatively affect their educational outcomes. And these challenges, they require targeted support. The O3 Plus program was designed precisely to respond to these realities and new challenges that these young people face in institutions of higher end learning. And the O3 Plus program responds with purpose in terms of promoting informed choices about health and well-being. Secondly, it responds to reduce new HIV acquisitions and unintended pregnancies. And thirdly, it responds in tackling gender-based violence on and off campus. Next slide. The O3 Plus model is built around 4 pillars. First, there is the institutional strengthening, where we are working to institutionalize life skills, health education, and SRHR services. Depending on the regions where you're coming from, some refer this to as comprehensive sexuality education, but others are also using other terms in terms of describing, but the basic theme really is how we are trying to support institutionalized comprehensive life skills that promote health and well-being within the institution framework and structures. Secondly, the second pillar is on promoting students' health and well-being, where we are building and strengthening the capacity of campus health facilities to offer youth-friendly services for students that are acceptable, that are accessible, and that really tries to meet the needs of the students within these higher and tertiary institutions. The third objective looks at how, as a program, we can support institutions to have safe and inclusive campuses. This is where most of our work under gender-based violence is primarily located under this pillar. It covers the prevention aspect as well as response, and this includes sexual harassment, including online and digital forms, bullying, discrimination, misinformation, and all forms of violence that can happen around, within, and through campus environments, with a strong focus on inclusion and protection. The fourth pillar looks at evidence building and knowledge sharing, where we are supporting a number of research pieces and evidence building, because, as my previous presenter has shared, there is really paucity of data with regards to these issues because of the sensitivity surrounding these topics. And so the fourth pillar of this program really tries to see how we can build evidence and strengthen the evidence so that we can inform the various interventions that we are supporting. Next slide. The program was launched in 2021, and the program is shown on the map, is being implemented across 6 countries. That is Zambia, Zimbabwe, which are phase 1 countries, Kenya, Tanzania, phase 2, Namibia, and Uganda. And it is estimated to reach almost 500,000 students across 6 countries. And this work is being supported through 45 higher and tertiary education institutions within the 6 countries. So how is UNESCO All3+ preventing and responding to gender-based violence in higher and tertiary institutions? We'll find that a number of interventions we are supporting across those 4 thematic pillars that the program seeks to address. Firstly, through raising awareness. We have an awareness campaign that was developed, as awareness is the foundation of really having students knowing what is GBV, what comprises of GBV, are they able to act or even respond in the face of experiencing an encounter with any form of violence. So evidence from the multi-country study, as we have also just heard, shows that silence and stigma, they remain major challenges, and in response, the Safer Campuses campaign was created to break this silence by raising awareness among students on what GBV looks like, and increasing understanding on all forms of gender-based violence that can happen within and around or through campus environments, and its impact as well on students in higher and tertiary education settings. Secondly, the Safer Campuses campaign was meant to encourage dialogue and facilitate open discussions and conversations to challenge harmful norms and attitudes surrounding GBV. A lot of peer educators, a lot of discussions and forums were supported in terms of trying to facilitate open discussions and conversations to try and demystify the secrecy and the silence surrounding the various forms of gender-based violence. And also, thirdly, the Safer Campuses campaign sought to make GBV visible and really bring it to the fore, making it an issue so that it's not just shrouded within that silence, but is really talked about from the students to the lecturers to the non-academic staff to the support staff in administration, in security, in all spheres and environments of the campus and environment. And really, it sought to encourage individuals and institutions to take concrete steps towards preventing and addressing GBV through the adaptation of policies, protocols, and enhanced support for referral services. And so you find that this Safer Campuses campaign, though launched last year, it's still ongoing, and it also aligns with the global 16 days of activism, making it really a timely event for today's discussion. Elements of the campaign, just to give a snippet of what it really comprised of, it was and it is still a very comprehensive ongoing campaign. And so far we have had over 770 pledges that have been done by students and staff. These pledges were encouraging individuals to commit to supporting the campaign and taking action. And commitments included speaking out against gender-based violence, supporting survivors, and pledges were made on cameras, infographics. We had a hashtag, #Safer Campuses campaign, #Breaking the Silence, which is also still ongoing. We supported competitions which were meant to amplify youth voices, and one such competition was the Changemaker competitions, where the different faces of GBV were encouraged, like to have students really demonstrate their creativity in terms of what GBV looks like. Because for some, as we heard from the previous speaker, some really were not able to identify what is gender-based violence, or if they experience any form, or some students you find they were not aware that I'm being violated. We had a radio drama series which were exploring scenarios of power, consent, and harassment. And these radio dramas and the digital toolkit were co-created by students themselves, where we sought the different scenarios that happen as a freshman entering into college, or someone who has stayed within campus. What has been your experience? And students were really informed the radio dramas, the skits, the digital toolkit, and the materials that were developed as part of the campaign. The social media engagement is still ongoing, and to date, we estimate that the campaign has sensitized over 6.4 million across the region, really demonstrating the broad public engagement in the GBV discussion and the campaign. In terms of how else we are supporting institutions, secondly, we realize that awareness alone, even through campaigns, is not enough. We need structures, and we need to set up and strengthen institutional structures for prevention and response. So in response, you'll find that the program really has helped institutions establish structures to support and respond to gender-based violence. This has seen the establishment of more than 20 gender desks in particular. As of end of 20, as we round off 2025, we've established 26 gender desks across the 6 countries. We have 3 wellness centers. There are a number of safe spaces and counseling units that have been established across countries. And within the 45 institutions that have been supported through the program, a number of them now have policies and guidelines on GBV, including digital violence. We have also managed to support even the development of policies at national level, which I'll also share a bit later on. And all this shows to show that the support really has been critical, and that it really has helped the research project bridge the gap between the students' experiences and the institutional response. However, what we have also experienced as we implement the program is enforcement of the policies with fidelity remains an issue which requires close monitoring. And we've also worked quite a lot in trying to strengthen reporting and referral systems and follow up in terms of even as we refer students to uptake services, are they really taking up the services? And suppose there is a report, are these cases really seen to conclusion, so that the students themselves can also have confidence in the reporting structures that are set up by the institutions, and are also encouraged to report in cases of violation, or as bystanders who are also stepping in to assist colleagues who have experienced a violation. We have also supported through the program enhancing access to support services, and this has also been at the center of the work that we have supported. And in terms of trying to ensure that students access support to services. We have worked closely with students to co-create and to develop a mobile application known as Future Plus in Zimbabwe. In Zambia, it is known as the Baza, and in Uganda, Yamba. In Kenya, it's Rada. So we really try to contextualize and really make relevant the application depending on the country and on the students who are accessing from that country. And the good features about this mobile application is that it has a directory of services on location, contacts of nearby services from other stakeholders who are able to provide services, whether on campus or outside campus. And it also includes helplines to call in case of emergency, and has contacts for counselors. So that's why sometimes you find it really needs to be contextualized and localized. Say for Zimbabwe, we would now need really to map the different service providers for Zimbabwe, their contacts, and also the referral pathways that are used within Zimbabwe in terms of the GBV framework prevention and response. So this is also how we have really managed to support to link students to support services. Just a brief spotlight also on the work we have done through the program where we have supported and influenced even policy at national level. The slide here is showing how in Zimbabwe the launch of the National Sexual Harassment Policy. This is the national and benchmarking anti-sexual harassment policy for higher and tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe, which was supported through the program. So we have the minister there, the permanent secretary, launching this national policy, which really serves as a benchmarking model for institutions now to adopt and also to draft or to update or to review their institutional policies that they currently have. Why Zimbabwe needed this policy and why we supported it through the program was the fact that data showed that sexual harassment was really pervasive and underreported, and it was harming students and mental health, and also having negative outcomes in terms of their academic achievement. And really, for us, it was very easy because ministry already was also had some thinking around this work, but they just needed support in terms of developing a comprehensive policy which all institutions can make use of and adapt. So ministry took leadership to unify all higher and tertiary institutions and come up with one standard of a policy which really outlines the zero and GBV tolerance approach. The policy objectives will just quickly show you as shown, really were the objectives of the policy to have a standardized policy framework for guiding and benchmarking across all higher and tertiary institutions, promote safe and conducive inclusive learning environments. And it really also set out to define the roles of the different people who are mandated with managing and prevention of response to sexual harassment in these institutions. The key features, which are 4, and I'm almost concluding, the key features of note in this policy, which really was welcomed even at its launch, was that firstly, it had a comprehensive definition of what is sexual harassment. It included all the different types of sexual harassment. Secondly, it was its scope in terms of being able to cover incidents that happen on campus and off campus, academic trips, social events, sporting events that happen within institutions, and the reporting structures and mechanisms. Thirdly, it was also its survivor-centered approach where confidentiality, psychosocial support were highly prioritized, and including bystander intervention was really encouraged. And also it had very clear reporting procedures and survivors can choose if they want the formal route or the informal reporting, which also in some ways guarantees confidentiality. And lastly, it really spells out strict sanctions for staff as well as even for students themselves when found to have violated another students. And it really has a zero strict no tolerance on sexual harassment. This brings to an end my presentation, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thanks to Penelope Casere for highlighting the importance of the O3 project, not only raising awareness on gender-based violence, but also in fostering dialogue and empowering action to face GBV in higher education. Next on the agenda, we have Bernice Munando, Executive Director at the Female Students Network Trust and laureate of UNESCO's Prize for Women's and Girls' Education, who will talk about the importance of understanding gender-based violence in higher education in Zimbabwe. Over to you, Bernice.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for the opportunity. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, wherever you are. So I think you've already introduced me, just to confirm that I'm Evanice Munando, the Executive Director for Female Students Network. So my presentation really is going to highlight how and what constitutes harassment or gender-based violence in higher and tertiary institutions. So it's like also agreeing with your panel that we are in the mood of celebrating the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So this topic is actually relevant to our discussion today. Next slide, please. About Female Students Network, I think Sarah had also done some justice just to say, introduce us as the first laureate for the UNESCO Prize, but also to say the Female Students Network empowers female students in higher and tertiary institutions through leadership development and mentorship programs. We have members of over 40,000 across the 43 institutions that we work with that are located in the 10 provinces of Zimbabwe. That includes private and state universities, polytechnic, teacher training institutions, and vocational training centers. And aside of leadership development, we also do psychosocial support, supporting survivors of sexual gender-based violence, and also do police advocacy, health and well-being. Next slide, please. Higher education context on GBV. I am talking with regards to female students whom we work with every day. So what they are facing, I think some of the highlights or some of the issues have been highlighted before, even from the research that was presented faced by the director, and also Daniela also managed to also talk about it, but also in our Zimbabwean context, sexual harassment and assault is a key and a common issue that is happening in our tertiary institutions, which happens between lecturers and students. It happens within the lecture rooms and also walls of residence, in social spaces, be it in sports fields, and often perpetrated by peers or male students and non-academic staff. I would not want to take you back. I think in 2015, we did the national survey on sexual harassment that also instigated the advocacy work that you see happening currently even within the higher and tertiary education ministry, where we also reviewed that most of our female students, they face sexual harassment every day. And it has been very said that most of the perpetrators were male lecturers, and because of power dynamics that happens between the students and the lecturers. And there are also issues around power imbalances. Lecturers, like I've said. And what was very disappointing, it was the underreporting of incidents of sexual harassment because of unclear reporting channels, a fear of stigma, retaliation, or disbelief. Because sexual harassment, I think for a long time in our country, it has been taken as a misconduct, not really a criminal offense. So when we need issues around evidence so that the students are able to prove that sexual harassment is happened, it is a problem, but we also celebrate what Sela has already alluded to say, at least with an anti-sexual harassment police model is a model police, which we are also looking forward that it is going to make a difference. And victim blaming culture, to say, what were you doing? And when it happened, where were you? What were you wearing? These are issues also that are often happening in our tertiary institutions. And also they enforce silence and shame on our female students. There's also psychological trauma, emotional abuse, intimidation, bullying, and undermining confidence and mental health. I think this has been overemphasized. But also issues around peer pressure and social norms. They are also a contributory factor when it comes to sexual harassment. And I'll also mention an issue that is linked to the 2025 theme on 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which we are advocating for free digital space for our young women. And technology facilitated gender-based violence is also prevalent, where we are having our female students being cyberbullied, where a lot of violence is also happening through the internet and also through online, which is also part of the sexual harassment. Next slide. Oh yes, what is GBV in higher tertiary institutions? I think in one way or the other, I also spoke about it, but just to emphasize the point that GBV in higher education refers to an act of violence, harassment, abuse directed at individuals because of their gender. In this case, we are talking about female students, and now it's also happening. It's also good to share with you that besides female students, it's also happening even to male students, even to the lecturers. It's something that we are really paying attention to say, as we advocate for a stop to sexual harassment, who are the perpetrators, who are our alliances, so that we are strategically positioned to address the scourge. Next slide, please. I think this one I also spoke about it. Why GBV in higher education matters. This is very critical. For just to say with you statistics that I did not put on the slide, to say, as female students network, every day we may receive 2 to 3 cases of sexual harassment that is happening in our tertiary institutions. And this undermines academic freedom and mental health and institutional credibility. Because besides that, there are a lot of efforts that we've put in terms of really ending sexual harassment. I think it still remains an issue where we haven't really established in terms of recourse to say what is going to happen to the perpetrator. But I'm happy that the anti-sexual harassment policy is somehow tried to really make sure that those who have perpetrated violence, if they are students, they can be expelled. If they are lecturers, they can also be dismissed. But we haven't really had a case that is sailed through in terms of having recourse. And to that regard, I think there's lack of information to the students, which we are also really making sure that we convey the rightful information so that they also have confidence in reporting sexual harassment and also bring the perpetrators to book. But it's something that is still a problem where students, and maybe they're also taking it from the previous circumstances where nothing could be done for the perpetrator. So it discourages female students, and are still discouraged to report because they think it really take a lot of their time of study and also pursuing sexual harassment. And also to share with you that around 2017, with a female student who really pursued their case in trying to bring it to book and manage to get recourse, but it took more than 7 years to graduate because the issues were like going in circles. There was really not a clear mechanism to really seek recourse and justice for the students. So that example discouraged so many students to really report sexual harassment. But we are also scaling up or intensify our advocacy work in encouraging them to really report sexual harassment and also assure them in terms of the recourse that has been presented by our Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development. Next slide, please. Yes, like I think I talk about it. I've spoken about it to say we are now focusing on the digital violence, recognizing that online harassment, abuse, and exploitation are among the fastest growing forms of gender-based violence. So yeah, it's really difficult, despite the fact that there are some mechanisms that are in place. Online violence is also leading to our female students, even male students, committing suicide because when the nudes are online and there's nothing that has been done, the students will end up having these suicidal attempts and thinking about taking off their lives. But as FSN, through our psychosocial support department, that's where now we are complementing the institutional and the government effort on bringing on the fore the counseling and also preliminary accommodation for the students so that they're able to really feel safe before we proceed with the court procedures. Next slide, please. All right. Statistical analysis, just to give a synopsis of what is happening in Zimbabwean context. I think even your research might have also alluded to the same experience that we've also faced as FSN. So 39.4% of women experience physical violence. I think this is general. But when we talk about harassment and if we break it down, 11.6% of women have faced sexual violence. And then 16.2% of women were married before the age of 18. So in Zimbabwe, our age of consent has been reviewed from 16 to 18. So we have been having these young girls, before even they reach university, they are getting married because of sexual harassment, especially those who come and belong to the apostolic sect. They really have problems in terms of, getting married because of the doctrines of the church. And as an organization that is working in higher education, we are losing most of the girls. They are not reaching tertiary because of early child marriage and also early pregnancies that is happening. So in higher education, FSN's institutional survey shows sexual harassment is the most reported form of GBV. So aside of early marriages, sexual harassment is on the high side, and it's often involving lecturers and staff. I think you can pass this one. I'm sure you've already alluded to. You can pass this comparative insights. It's not necessary. So let me also delve into the institutional gaps that we have observed as the Female Students Network in Zimbabwe. So in most of our institutions, there's the Students Affairs Departments. So the Student Affairs Department is a big and a very broad department that deals with the welfare of students, but it does not have specific portfolio that deals with these very soft issues. So when I say soft issues, I'm talking about the issues of harassment, because when they talk about students' affairs, mostly it's welfare, and welfare is about issues that are general, academic and even academic affairs, and also maybe accommodation and other issues. But I think there's a lack of the portfolio that really deals with particular issues like sexual harassment and sexual exploitation. Hence, even if they want to access accommodation, the sexual exploitation and coercion that happens, because most of our administrators, they're still male dominated, and as such, female students in access to those services that are there already in our institutions, they face sexual harassment. So our recommendation would be also to say, I think they need to revisit the Students' Affairs Department so that it has a desk that is able to respond effectively and timely to the needs of students, especially female students, on sexual exploitation and harassment. We've also discovered that there are weak reporting mechanisms and fear of retaliation. Yeah, the reporting mechanism, it says any issues should be reported to the Dean of Students. And with the new anti-sexual harassment policy, it has tried to really, provide some alternatives. But I think for the feedback that we get from the students is that if they report within the institution already, because the institution is connected, and if the issue comes out, the students are not safe. So I would like to also to applaud institutions like the University of Zimbabwe and the Middle Eastern University, who have recommended us as Female Students Network to deal with sexual harassment issues separately and help the institutions to also investigate, and doing this together with the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. I think it was working better for the students. And there's also there's absence of survivor-centered policies and mechanisms. Yes, the sexual harassment and sexual harassment policy is here, but I think now it has to reach to the students. The students really know what this, with the existence of this policy, and if so, what are the mechanisms that are there that are straightforward to support and protect students as they face sexual harassment. Inadequate of digital safety protocols, some institutions have managed to really do great in trying to come up with these protocols. But I think the implementation now, the gap that we have discovered, that it's there, but the students might not have information around these digital safety protocols. So there's need for awareness and also information dissemination to the rights holders. There's also lack of trained focal points on sexual and reproductive health and rights services. Let me speak from experience that as we are also dealing with Christian-based institutions, this has been a problem to say, how do we demystify sexual and reproductive health and rights issues? So in some institutions, they were saying, no, it's immoral. We can't talk about this issue. It's a taboo. But during our advocates' interventions with other institutions that are Christian-based, they've managed to really understand that we need to address realities rather than to focus on doctrines. And there's an improvement in such areas. But I think there's need to really have intensified training so that the frontline responders, especially those frontline desk personnel, are able to really understand and receive the issues that come with the students, so that they're able to address and help them so that they feel safe at campus. Next slide, please. Yes, AFS interventions in one way or the other. I was mentioning them, but let me also inform the House that we have been privileged to have established the FSN hub. And thanks to UNESCO, when we won the prize, this was a challenge to say, we can't continue to talk about sexual harassment when we don't put mechanisms that are practical, that are able also to respond and effectively safeguard the plight of female students. So we now have a hub that is situated in Rua. To those who are in Zimbabwe, they will understand it's a peri-urban area that the hub is, and it is called the Smart Hub. It's for Healing and Empowerment Center. What we think and what we are doing rather at the hub is to receive the students who are in need, and it's a walk-in area where they come in, talk about their issues, they meet the counselors, they meet the frontline human rights defenders, they talk about their issues. And we are in the process of also upgrading this center, where we want to create some income generating projects or some life skills development projects linking very closely with our other polytechnic. For example, Harare Polytechnic, they have these life skills, and also Daniko Industrial Training Center, to say how best can we come together and provide those skills where students, they can become economically independent, and also they have their skills like especially leadership trained, sharpened and enhanced, so that they're able to really, be able to represent their plight, and also be able to feed into the national discourse when it comes to women representation in decision making. So we are doing survivor support. Yeah, I think I've spoken about it. Yeah, let me talk. Sorry, it's okay. Yeah, I think I spoke about the storytelling. At the hub, there's a lot of things that are happening, and also to inform you that we do storytelling as a solid impact telling and documentation, where we profile our female students in terms of their experiences on sexual harassment, so that other students will be able to also learn from them. And the mentorship program is something that we are also doing, to say how can the alumni, that those who have finished tertiary, can also mentor those who are still at campus. And then let me also take this opportunity to applaud our government, the government of Zimbabwe. These are the strides that it has taken in ensuring that sexual harassment and gender-based violence is reduced in our country. We applaud the anti-sexual harassment policy model. I'm so happy that Penelope is clearly alluded and explained each and every aspect of it. And then we applaud also the government, and we also contributed on the establishment, on the influencing of the Cyber Security and Data Protection Act. So we are now complementing the government by disseminating or raising awareness on this act, because those female students who will be sexually or cyber bullied, they are not yet aware about this act, that if you are cyber bullied, you can actually report, and the perpetrator can actually face a criminal offense. The Domestic Violence Act of 2007 and the National Gender Policy that was recently reviewed and launched early this year, and then the National Development Strategy 1 and 2. So the 1 is expired this year, and now we've already embarked on the NDS 1 and NDS 2. That's the National Development Strategy 2. So, and then the recently launched National Gender Machinery Coordinated Framework. This was launched yesterday. And FSN is also participating in this national policy development, and also influencing and help the government cascading the information to the rights holders and even the grassroots. So these are the instruments that we are also using when we are also educating our female students, to say in terms of the litigation and the legal frameworks, what is there in our country that they can use, so that we install confidence in them, so that they don't remain and die in silence with regards to sexual harassment. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the recommendations for regional and call to action. I'm happy that as FSN, we were also privileged somehow to participate on the O3 Plus that Penelope has spoken about under the UNESCO Regional Office, Southern Regional Office. So what we also learned is that as we also supporting this cause and beyond, she spoke about the app that is there, and it's something that is really helping us very much as the advocates, champions in empowering female students. So the recommendation is around institutionalized technology facilitated gender-based violence policies and reporting pathways. It's something that is like to be purported as new. It's not something, we are still on an aha moment to say, really it's happening, but I think we need policies, institutional policies, not really like the national, the data data protection, the Cyber Security and Data Protection Act, we need to mainstream it or to link it up to the institutional. And how can institutions come up with such policies that also link with the national discourse? Then train staff and students on gender sensitive and digital safety, and then fund survivor support services in the mental health. I think also our hub needs some enhancement in terms of how best can we become effective enough, because as a national organization and having a one hub which is not yet even fully finished, I think is something that we need to do. And what we also propose is FSN, besides having that separate hub, we are also like leveraging on the life skills departments already existing at campus to also beef it up so that they become the hub, the supporting hub that deals with survivors that face harassment at campus before they also walk in to the smart hub for special and other services that might not be found at the campus. Collaborate across countries for shared learning and accountability. Already I'm happy that my country is also part of the global or the regional platform that we are today through this platform that we are today. So as an ending and a passionate short is to say, maybe go back to the previous slide, please. I have a statement that I need to read there. Eliminating gender-based violence in higher education is not just a policy issue. It's a commitment to dignity, equity, and transformation. So I think I'm happy again to say from the first presentation up to my presentation, we are talking the same subject. And I'm sure if you are going to collaborate and make sure that we come up with practical solutions to GBV in our tertiary institutions, we can make a difference and transform our higher education globally. And then the last slide is just to say, thank you so much for the opportunity, UNESCO. It is a privilege for us, and you can get in touch with us on the following social media handles. And thank you, and over to you, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Evernice Munando for sharing relevant information on sexual harassment in female students, and also for bringing about digital violence, which is the theme of this year's UNESCO's campaign for the 16th day of activism to end digital gender violence. We now have on the agenda Diana Arango, global leader on gender-based violence from the gender group at the World Bank, who will share with the audience information on gender-based violence in higher education settings in Chile and Peru. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see
Okay,
it.
great. Great, thank you. I'll try to be quick. I want to share today 2 experiences that we've had supporting higher education institutions in Latin America and the Caribbean to work on the problem of gender-based violence in these institutions. So I'll be sharing experiences from Peru and Chile and try to get through these quickly. So just first to give you a quick context, there are surveys in both countries, multi-university surveys to understand kind of the rates and the prevalence of gender-based violence in college campus. And we see that there's reporting of 65% of physical violence, 85% of psychological violence in Peru, in Chile, 26% and 57%. But we also see concerning rates of sexual harassment in both Peru and Chile with 32% and 34% respectively having experienced sexual harassment in education settings. And I do want to make sure that I note that both of these surveys interviewed both men and women, young men and women, but as is common with most forms of gender-based violence, young women in both countries were the most affected. So we took the survey findings and we partnered with some universities in Peru. This is, we'll talk about Peru first, and the Ministry of Women to see what we could do. And so as we saw, there's high alarming levels of sexual harassment in universities. There were also in the survey, I didn't present the data, but a lot of tolerance and acceptance of the use of violence in college campuses. Strategies to address this, combat this, when we took a look at them, they were very adult-centric. And we also recognize that these students are facing cognitive overload, and we have to really invest in prevention and response simultaneously in these settings. So we also were able to look at from the survey who were the most common perpetrators of violence, and it's really mostly student-on-student violence. So this is why we decided to create a course on creating empowering and safe environments and GBV-free campuses in Peru, and really wanted to have as outcomes the reduction of the prevalence of GBV, especially sexual harassment among students in the university, and really wanted to work on prevention and promote intervention before, during, and after. So even for witnesses, for survivors, for new students. And we wanted to create something with several partners because we thought this would be applicable across Peru, not just with the partner university that we created the course with. So taking into account the data that we had, the needs of students, that students could self-administer this in a user-friendly, interactive space, a space that was something that they could control and perhaps free of stigma or any other social norms constraints. We also included edutainment, and we included kind of like a gamified component. So kind of moving away from the adult-centric intervention into something more appropriate for the target audience. Really building on what we know from gender theory, experimental social psychology, behavioral sciences, and global good practices. We really were specifically and very intentionally targeting social norms that led to the acceptability of the use of sexual harassment and other forms of gender-based violence on college campuses, the attitudes towards this, and decisions made by perpetrators, survivors, and bystanders. So this is the course that we ended up with. It's a course that had 5 modules. First, we work on something that has been mentioned in other presentations, I think Zimbabwe in particular, the identification of sexual harassment, having students recognize themselves as survivors or experiencing sexual harassment. Then we move on to roles, stereotypes, and myths related to sexual harassment. So really trying to challenge traditional gender roles and that acceptability of the use of violence. And then the third module, we move into the space about consent, really trying to also challenge some of the myths and norms around consent and women saying no when they really want to say yes, etc. And then we go to the fourth module, which are risk factors and warning signs, to build skills and tools in students so they can understand whether they are in a situation that might lead to potential gender-based violence. And the fifth module is how to respond to sexual harassment, how to report, what services are available. So this is kind of some of the graphics of the course. It's an online course, and you can see it's very kind of youthful looking. We tried to use characters that all ethnicities and students could identify with. And we did this, I want to show this slide, in partnership with a lot of organizations, because we really wanted this to be used across institutions. So anyone that was supporting work in higher education settings, we included in this effort, including UNDP, the Spanish cooperation, UNESCO, the European Union, and obviously the Peruvian government, because we wanted also to build in sustainability. These are the 5 modules. Again, it's games, so you have to kind of pass each module to go on to the next one, and then at the end you are awarded a certificate. And this course was also accompanied by a very targeted communication campaign. So the idea was that students would take the course on their own, at their own pace, and that we also accompanied it with a broader communication campaign to be displayed in college campuses, also sending out reminders through email, and really kind of using kind of multiple channels to embed the course and these ideas into the minds and inboxes of students. We had, this was piloted. We had some challenges, but really the biggest challenge is to keep the course kind of active and present. So it was launched a few years ago. We did a relaunch a year ago, and as institutions change, as leadership in institutions change, we find that the sustainability aspect and the awareness of the existence of this course has been challenging to maintain. Also, as the Ministry of Women has also transitioned, sometimes the page where the course is offered is taken down, and we have to ask for it to be put back up. So there's some challenges there just in the accessibility and the coordination with diverse actors. But we also have limited resources to measure the outcome and impact of this course. So we did pilot test it, but now that it's been launched more massively, we're not able to measure how many students are taking it and things like that and follow the impact. So there are some challenges. But we do have some good lessons in the process of creating this. And most importantly was to create the course with youth themselves. So they were actively involved in the design and the development of the course content. We think that this course could be applicable to many countries globally, perhaps, but at least in the region. But we still think it's important to contextualize this and invest in adaptation. We think that there's even more ways to leverage technology and social media to promote the course. Technology and social media can be used for perpetrating gender-based violence, but it can also be part of the solution. And so really finding ways to leverage that technology alongside the course and kind of bring those messages into the students from multiple areas is important. And really the collaboration with multiple stakeholders is important because it's not just the World Bank and the Ministry of Women advocating for the use of this course. It's all of the stakeholders that you saw on that slide. So it's important in terms of coordination. We know that there's a lot of people interested in supporting the work on preventing sexual harassment in higher education institutions. So that was important as well. Now moving on to the Chile case study, really quickly, as you saw the prevalence rates before, there is high rates of sexual violence, over 30%. And in Chile, what we have is a strong normative framework. So there's the law 21369. This is a specific law that targets sexual harassment and gender-based violence in higher education settings in Chile. So this law exists, and it calls for the adoption of institutional GBV prevention policies and clear protocols for responding to complaints. It calls for the creation of specialized units responsible for preventing, investigating, and supporting survivors of gender-based violence. The law also calls for a guarantee of due process, confidentiality, protection against reprisals for any type of complaint. And it also calls for providing training for staff and students on gender equality and GBV prevention. Wonderful normative framework. What we see is that there is uneven implementation of the law. And so that is what the World Bank was brought in to fill the gap, basically. So we saw that there were a lot of universities that had really taken on this law and had developed all of the things that the law called for: protocols, guidelines, specialized units, training. And we saw that there were some universities that were really having difficulty getting started in the implementation of the law. So the World Bank facilitated with the Ministry of Education a gathering of all higher education institutions in Chile to discuss the law, the implementation of the law, and to foster kind of learning across institutions in Chile. And these are both private institutions and public institutions, which we think is really important because the law covered all of them. And so what we were doing while we were in that workshop, it was a 2-day workshop in Chile, was pulling out these good practices, the lessons learned, the challenges from universities that had taken kind of the helm of implementing this law so that the lessons could be learned by other universities and applied. One of the other important outcomes that we sought to kind of tackle in our assistance, our technical assistance to Chile, was that the superintendents of higher education was also mandated by the law in overseeing its implementation. So we agreed across the higher education institution and with the superintendents of higher education on some indicators to measure progress on each of the areas that the law mandated. And really, the final thing that was achieved, I think, in this workshop and technical support to Chile was that we were able even to go beyond what the law mandated in terms of sexual harassment and really link this to the agenda of gender equality and dissect how higher education institutions are key parts of challenging gender inequality and social norms that underlie and feed the acceptability of violence against women. And so going beyond the law to prevent sexual harassment and really seeing higher education institutes as areas for transformation of youth and generations in these countries. So we also wrote a paper, Preventing, Reporting, and Responding to Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment in Tertiary Education Centers. I'm happy to share the link if others are interested, but you can Google it and it'll come up with that title. And for now, the World Bank is focused on a couple of things. It's great to see the UNESCO multi-country study. We hear even in settings that have created their own surveys that there's differences in surveys across one single country, for example. And so we really want to invest in the standardization of tools at regional level that will allow for consistent and comparable measurement of GBV in educational settings, especially higher educational settings. And we also want to focus on these good practices, the replicability, systematizing and standardizing the responses by college campuses, higher education settings, and facilitate kind of that knowledge sharing, that kind of standardization of how we address this across the region like we did in Chile with tools like the one that we created in Peru. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thanks, Diana, for sharing applicable lessons through the course implemented for preventing sexual harassment in higher education institutions in Peru and the Chile case with a specific law targeted to prevent GBV in institutions and supporting survivors of GBV, and the work done by the World Bank in this context. We continue with our agenda with the screening of the O3 project video, which highlights how the increased uptake of health services, the integration of health education into tertiary education curriculum, and rollout of comprehensive student-focused policy represent a significant and sustainable transformation in the prioritization of student health and well-being to ensure that young people can thrive in institutions of higher learning. So can you, Daniele, share the video, please? Thanks. We can hear the video. Can you try again? If not, we can try to play it from here.
Hi, Sarah. Let me try again. I'm sharing it. Can you please confirm you can see the video?
We can see it. We can see the image.
You are failure.
Yes. Maybe you want to go back to start again, Daniele, so that we can.
You are failure. You can't do it.
Oh, it's fine.
And many. You can't do it. Many.
My knees are not good enough. I can't achieve anything.
This is not the life Yohari dreamed for herself.
My boyfriend kept abusing me verbally. He belittled me, taking away my confidence and my will. I must break up the silence and break free from this unhealthy relationship. The staff at the gender desk and counseling unit have been so nice to me and helpful. They guide me, give me strength. I need to stand up for myself. End this toxic relationship and focus on my studies.
There were not many students coming to report matters of relationship compared to when we have started the gender desk. So when we started the gender desk, many students have come to understand that it is their right to report, that they can report issues of GBV and sexual harassment so that we can be helped.
Through UNESCO's Our Rights, Our Lives, Our Future Plus program, gender desks have been set up across several higher and tertiary education institutions in Kenya and Tanzania. It is a dedicated space for young people like Johari to seek advice, report an incident of violence or harassment, and get free and confidential counseling support. The O3 Plus program as a whole is designed to reach 500,000 young people across universities and colleges in Kenya, Namibia, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Beyond ending gender-based violence, the program also aims to reduce HIV acquisition and avert unintended pregnancies by integrating health and well-being education into institutions' curricula, strengthening related policies, and improving access to sexual and reproductive health services. To maximize impact, the program invests in research and uses the latest findings to inform its strategies and better respond to students' needs. In Zambia and Zimbabwe, for example, young people are increasingly accessing sexual and reproductive health services, benefiting from improvement of campus clinic infrastructures.
When it comes to facility upgrade, we now have a shed. This shed outside our nasty clinic there, it helps us in terms of when we want to grade or to treat students. We now have solar. When we have electricity outages, the clinic remains lighted.
At these clinics, health service providers often organize outreach activities to raise awareness on HIV, In Zambia, door-to-door services are also being offered, which for many can be life-changing. Increased knowledge has led to positive changes in student attitude, reducing stigma around services like HIV testing and other SRH services. Since the launch of the program, a total of 68,000 students were tested for HIV, while 900 healthcare providers were trained on the provision of youth-friendly sexual and reproductive health information and services. Beyond enhancing access to sexual reproductive health services, UNESCO has supported 45 institutions to include health education into their curricula, reaching 250,000 students. To ensure this crucial information reaches students from the very beginning, UNESCO has also integrated key health and well-being information into institutions' orientation programs.
I attended the orientation week. It was quite informative. I had some interactions with different PhDs at NAST, and they were informing us on SRH, sexual and reproductive health. They even taught us on how to use the mobile application, on how to access services, maybe the clinic.
Rollout of sexual harassment policies and gender-based violence guidelines are also another crucial point of intervention. Through the program, a total of 43 higher and tertiary education institutions have incorporated sexuality education into their policies, empowering young people to make informed decisions about their lives. Some of these young people now serve as peer educators who play a key role in promoting health education to their peers via the UNESCO-supported mobile applications, while raising awareness on gender-based violence. Harrison is one such peer educator from Zambia, who was one of 8,000 trained by UNESCO.
I'm right here at the Evening Gone Safer Campuses campaign launch. As you can see behind me, there's great momentum. Currently, I'm the brand ambassador together with my colleague Moffat, and we promote the app. The Onyo app is actually a one-stop center where we get to have information on reproductive health and rights.
The digital access to health education, the increased uptake of health services, the integration of health education into the tertiary education curriculum, and the rollout of comprehensive student-focused policies represent a significant and sustainable transformation in the prioritization of student health and well-being to ultimately ensure that young people like Johari can thrive in institutions of higher learning.
Okay, now we would like to thanks to all our speakers for the contributions and proceed to the Q&A, the questions and answer part of the webinar. We have some questions that have received from our audience, and we are gonna pass them on to our panelists today. We only have a few 20 minutes for this and also for the conclusions. So we'll see how we can manage to cover, if not all, at least some of them. First of all, we have one question addressed to the research team, in this case to Daniele Vieira. And the question is, what role can UNESCO play in ensuring that research findings like this translate into actionable policies at the national and institutional levels? Over to you, Daniele.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the question. Well, as I said in the beginning of the presentation, this is a working process. We are finalizing the data analysis. The first result of this research exercise will be a global report. And with that global report in hand, we are going to have a couple of activities that we are planning with the institutions that took part in the research and also the countries that joined us in the survey. So we want to translate those survey results into some sort of policy guidance. We will have some recommendations for practice, not only for further research, but also for practice and for policy making as part of the provide some policy guidance and also to help developing some actionable recommendations inside the institutions. So we are also planning to support the institutions in a couple of capacity building programs, training, or also to share the knowledge with the institutions that were part of it. So this is not gonna, as I said, stop here. This is work in progress in terms of analysis, and then we plan to translate those analysis in practical activities that can support the institutions and also the countries to combat the problem of GBV inside the organizations, the higher education organizations. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Daniele. And next, we have a question for Bernice Monando. And it says, many thanks for the interesting presentation. And how did the award of the UNESCO Prize for Girls and Women's Education help you advance your cause? Over to you, Bernice.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So just to highlight that we won the UNESCO award in 2016, and we've managed to do quite a lot. The first thing that we did is to develop a sexual harassment policy model that was used by the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education institutions and the institutions to develop their independent institutional sexual harassment policies. And I'm sure in 2022, we also witnessed the Public Service Commission also adopting the sexual harassment policy model that we developed in also developing their sexual harassment public affairs policy. And in terms of leadership, I can safely also inform you that before we got the UNESCO award, I think we're at 7% female representation in Student Representative Council. So after the UNESCO award, even to date, we've recorded 25% increase of female students representation in Student Representative Council, occupying meaningful decision-making positions such as the presidents and the secretary generals, which used to be the male-dominated positions in leadership. And in terms of psychosocial support, like I've indicated earlier in my presentation, that supporting survivors of sexual gender-based violence through counseling, also being nominated by institutions of higher learning to really support, to further support female students who they faced sexual harassment and becoming an external advisory committee or an external advisory support that will also help the institutions to investigate issues around sexual harassment. But broadly, I'm so happy also to say the anti-sexual harassment policy model that the ministry has come out with. Since that time, that when we did the sexual harassment national baseline survey in 2025, I'm sure we're the first organization to really, interrogate sexual harassment in higher education. So we've been supporting the government efforts through also raising awareness on sexual harassment and also being a support system in terms of empowering our female students to be able to speak out. We now hear about these too many stories. It's because the female students are now more aware that what is sexual harassment, and they are now more aware in terms of what should be done. So I think there are a lot that we've done to date, and we really thank UNESCO that besides, even programming in our countries, we have also been provided by participating in global platforms where we also share our experiences and be able to help other organizations even within the region and international. Thank you. I hope I've managed to really articulate and respond to the question adequately.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Bernice. Now we have a question for Diana Arango. And the question is, how do you see the role of university leadership in shifting the culture around gender-based violence in higher education? Over to you, Diana.
Yeah, I think, am I frozen? Oh, okay. No, I think we saw that really both in both Peru and Chile. In Chile, there was such a stark difference between the universities that had leadership supportive of the implementation of the law and the leadership that really didn't kind of prioritize the implementation of the law. And where we had leadership that prioritized the implementation of the law, we saw innovation, we saw funding and staff time allocated to really thinking through the best ways for the university and its policies to address this. So I think leadership can open spaces for the work, provide funding for the work, and provide kind of the mandate in terms of reference for university staff to dedicate some time in thinking into this. And they're really the ones that can also bring in the students to help shape the narratives, because we saw some examples of kind of top-down implementation of the law and some that were very integrative of students in the creation of the policies and implementation. So leadership makes a huge difference. And hopefully by getting all of the universities together in Chile, we help them see what is possible with really strong leadership.
Thank you, Diana. And now we have one question to Penelope Casere. And the question is, what structural changes in higher education institutions are most urgently needed to improve gender-based violence prevention and response? Over to you, Penelope. Are you there?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, which is very relevant. I think from our experience in implementing O3+, it's clear that what's really required are clear.
Sorry, Penelope, I'm sorry for we cannot see you. Maybe you turn off your camera or in your computer.
Okay, can you see me?
Screen, but no, not yet.
Oh, I have.
We see your background, but we don't see your face. Maybe it's maybe your lens is closed in the computer.
Oh, okay. Let me try this. Can you see me now?
No. Well, if you don't mind.
Okay. I'm not so sure what's happening. Let me stop video. Let me start again.
Let's try again. No, we can't see. We see your screen, but we don't see your
You
face.
can't see me.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure what happened.
Well,
Yes.
if not, sorry for the interruption. We can continue with your answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I was saying that from our experience in implementing the O3+, it's clear that I think what is really required are clear and enforced GBV policies. We need clear sanctions as to what happens when students report, and the mechanisms need to be transparent so that the policies are not just documents, but they are really like living tools and that students can have confidence in. We need confidential reporting mechanisms coupled with, I would say, specialized training for staff, the students themselves. In fact, for this whole system to work, we need a whole institution engagement with strong partnerships in services, law enforcement, community organizations as well, for advocacy, and regulatory authorities that also come to play their complementary role in terms of the response. And last but not least, I'm not so sure if we had mentioned this, we really require robust data systems that are able to track the incidents, the responses, the case outcomes, and also, yes, maybe also really feedback to the survivors so that they really see the conclusion of these cases and people can have system in the reporting structures. Thank you.
Thank you, Penelope. Unfortunately, we have to go to conclude today's webinar and have no time left for more questions. There has been a very interesting activity in the chat with many commentaries, so we invite you to check them all and to interact with them. So now we have Daniele Vieira with the concluding remarks of this webinar. We thank our distinguished panelists again for their contribution and our audience, today's audience for the participation. Over to you, Daniele.
Thank you, Sarah. Just to say thank you once again to everyone for joining us today. To highlight again that this has been a preliminary exercise for us to show the data that we are still analyzing. Thank you, Penelope, Diana, Evernice, for bringing your contributions. We consider this to be a very interesting South-South exercise, South-South cooperation exercise, and this is something that we would like to continue doing within the next years and expand the project to other countries. But for now, we are finalizing, as I said, this analysis. We will have the final report will also be launched, and then we welcome everyone to follow us on social media for the news once we have the final document, and then we can really show the final analysis. Just one point, Sarah, indeed we don't have more time for more questions, but I was following here the commentaries in the chat, and I saw that some of our participants here were asking about recommendations or aspects about stigma, and this is something that will be included in the last version of the report. I have not touched any aspects now related to recommendations, but of course, based on the data, this will be also developed and shared with everyone. So just to highlight that. But once again, thank you so much for your participation. This has been really nice to also hear the presentations of the other colleagues. And once again, we welcome you to follow us. We invite you to follow us on social media for next news on this and other activities that we are doing in line with GBV studies in higher education. Sarah, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniele. On behalf of the UNESCO team, we extend our sincere gratitude to those who join us today from the interim direction of the Institute in charge of Boren Chakroun, to the research team, today represented by Daniel Vieira, also to our distinguished guests, Penelope Casere, Evernice Munando, and Diana Arango, to the people who share with us their testimonies for this research, and also to the team that make it possible behind the scenes, Claudia Delgado and Edward Betancourt. On behalf of all the participants in today's event, we extend our thanks to all of you for joining us in another initiative to promote higher education without violence worldwide. Please keep updated in everything related to higher education in Latin America and the Caribbean and globally through our English and Spanish website, IESALC.unesco.org, where you can find our links to our social media accounts, and also by searching for UNESCO IESALC in the social networks. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to joining you at our upcoming events. See you soon. Thanks.